Hello everyone, I bring you a story, chilling and full of mystery. I lived in an old funeral home. If you believe in the supernatural, or they simply like intriguing stories, this story is for you. Stay until the end, and don't forget to subscribe for more content like this one. It was a cold and rainy night, of those in which silence weighs, and the streets seemed deserted. Had accepted a temporary job in a funeral home, looking for something to keep me busy. I did not expect adventures or supernatural experiences. I just wanted to earn some money, while looking for a more stable job. But as life usually happens, I had other plans. The funeral home was an ancient place, with long corridors and dim lighting. There was something in the air that made me feel always watched, even though he was trying to convince me that it was just the effect of the lights and shadows. The walls were decorated with antique portraits, black and white photographs of people who were no longer in this world. It did not help that the place was full of furniture, old games with screeches that seemed to have a life of their own every time I approached them. My first day was quiet. I learned how to prepare the wake rooms, to take care of the details with respect, and to guide family members with discretion. But that same night, when my turn was over, and I was about to leave, I heard a sound. Came from the basement, a part of the building that I had barely seen. No one had told me anything about that place, and the snow beat me. I turned on a flashlight and went down the stairs, hoping to find some logical source for the noise. Upon reaching the basement, the silence was overwhelming. But there was more or less a feeling in the mirror, an oppression that made me feel uncomfortable. I moved between boxes and old furniture, observing old details, until in the background I discovered a small door. Was covered with dust, and almost hidden behind some old stairs. I thought maybe I shouldn't open it, but again the crowd could do more. I turned the knob and the door creaked as it opened. On the other side I found a small room, almost empty except for a chair in the center, and a huge hole in the opposite wall. The atmosphere was heavy, and when I looked in the mirror, I felt something was wrong. It wasn't just my smile. It was as if there was something else behind me. I stared at, trying to distinguish anything, but there were only shadows. I took a step back and felt an intense cold in my chest. I decided it was enough for that night, and returned to the main floor. I found the door closed behind me. The following days were normal, but every night, at the end of my shift, I felt a kind of call, who invited me back to the basement. I tried to ignore it, convincing me that it was just my mind playing tricks. However, one night, when it was almost closing, the basement light turned on by itself. I saw it from the main hallway and was paralyzed. I knew there was no one else in the building. I took a deep breath and went down, waiting to find any failure in the electrical system, or something to explain the situation. Upon reaching the basement, the door I had found was wide open, and the chair was occupied. A dark figure with no visible features. I was sitting looking at myself. I didn't know if it was real or an illusion, but fear paralyzed me. The figure raised a hand and made me a gesture, inviting me to approach. I don't know why I did it, but I took a step forward, and then another. The cold in the room was almost unbearable, and the silence became even denser. The figure pointed out and when I looked at it, I saw a scene that left me frozen. It was me in that same place, but something was wrong. My grandfather looked paler, empty-eyed, as if something inside me is gone. I felt a pressure in my chest, as if an invisible hand was holding me. I tried to move, but could not. And then, in an almost inaudible whisper, the male figure. His voice was like a distant echo, loaded with sadness and despair. "Help me," said. Did not understand what he wanted, but the darkness in her voice made me feel compassion. I tried to talk, but my voice did not come out. I could only look, paralyzed, while the figure was watching me from the chair. Suddenly, everything got dark. I woke up on the floor, with the echo of the voice still in my mind. The figure and the reflection had disappeared. There was no trace of the door in the basement, and no one at the funeral home seemed to know what he was talking about. When I tried to ask them, it was as if it had all been a dream. Weeks have passed, and even though I tried to forget it, that feeling of sadness and oppression accompanied me every night. Sometimes I even thought I could hear the voice in my dreams, asking for help. I began to investigate the history of the funeral home, asking those who worked there. I discovered that it was many years ago, a former employee was missing. In strange circumstances, no one knew what had happened to him, but rumors said that the last thing that came to light was that I had been working in the basement. The story was vague, full of options and details, but it coincided with my experience. As time went on, the presence grew stronger. I began to see fleeting shadows, to feel inexplicable chills and hear whispers. When the place was silent, I knew I had to do something, but I didn't know what. Until one night, I decided to go back to the basement one last time. I came down with a candle in my hand, determined to face whatever it was that I was waiting for. The door that supposedly did not exist was there again. I walked in and the cold instantly enveloped me. The figure was sitting on the chair, looking at me with those dark, empty eyes. This time I managed to speak. "What you need?" I asked, my voice just a whisper. The figure stared at me and, in a heartbreaking tone, he told me, "Free me." I understood then that his soul was trapped there, in an endless cycle of sadness and despair. Did not know how to help him, but at that moment I felt a connection, a shared pain. I promised him I would do everything I could to rest in peace. The next day, I went to a nearby church and asked for a mass in his name. I didn't know if it would work, but it was the only thing I could think of. On returning to the funeral home, I felt a change in the atmosphere. The place was no longer so loaded, and the cold in the basement was gone. The door was no longer as if it had never existed since then. The funeral home was once again a quiet place. The whispers and shadows disappeared, and I never saw the figure again. But every time I think of that night, I feel a strange peace, as if somehow I had done something good. Sometimes when I pass in front of a corpse at the funeral home, I seem to see a glimmer in my chest, a reminder of that promise fulfilled. This is how I found my time at the funeral home, but the experience marked me forever. Made me believe in something beyond the tangible. On the importance of helping even those who are no longer with us. Now every time I hear a whisper, oh, I feel an inexplicable cold. I think of him hoping that finally has found the peace he sought so much.